Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast. Powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. With Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson, bringing you all the chatter that matters.
Well, we're back in action, Phil, after a nice long break. How are you?
I'm good. We've got a lot of white fields at the minute. I think everyone's feeling the cold, and I think it's coming down south, I think, the end of this week for the weekend. So, we've had it up north, should I say, with my Yorkshire northern accent there. But, I think...
You're sending it down south.
You're getting it down south now, so you're welcome. Yeah, we've had it. We're a little bit more used to it than you guys are, but I'm sure I'll have the Scottish listeners saying you don't even know what it's like down your way, Phil. But anyway, we are on season 11. So that's 11 years now, Curtis.
Which is absolutely amazing, isn't it?
We've stuck at it. 11 years, we're still here, still going strong, still committed. Still committed to sharing the weekly headlines with everybody.
And in terms of podcasts, that's pretty much first generation, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We've obviously got something that works.
Yes. Not quite sure what it is, but
no.
we'll stick at what we do. So we'll start off this show with a thanks to Motors for their continued sponsorship in 2025. So many thanks to Phil Jones, Lucy Tugby and the rest of the team there. And do look out for some new features on the pod over the course of 2025, as well as our regular weekday episodes when we interview industry leaders and analysts to bring you the latest news and views on what's happening in the sector. We'll have a couple of new items as well.
We will, and a shout out while you're mentioning Phil and Lucy there, that we do need to get them back on, don't we, at some point in the first part of this year. It's been a while since we've spoken to Phil or Lucy on the podcast, so if you are listening this morning, Lucy, Phil, then please do get in touch, and we'll love to hear from you on one of our episodes.
We'll also be running more regular Supplier Specials with dedicated standalone shows focusing on businesses, helping dealers to maximise their operations. And if you are a supplier and would like us to profile your business, then just message myself or Philip. We're both on LinkedIn, and let's chat. But they were a big success last year, weren't they?
Yeah, very popular, and I think I think people are starting to realise it's a good way to get their business, their messaging, what they do, what they offer to the sector out to the listeners. And it's working really well for them. So I think good initiative, that one that we did. And this morning as well, we're going to be joined by the midway break with our guru of mental wealth, Stephen Whitton, with his first of this year's monthly Men-Able Moments, and he'll be looking at moving monthly the mental well-being higher up on the agenda throughout 2025. So stay tuned for that at the midway break.
You're listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors.
Headlines this week come from AM, Car Dealer, Motor Trade News and Reuters. We'll start with a full rundown of the 2024 new car and van registrations and look at the impact that the ZEV mandate had on those registrations, and look at some of the winners and losers. And staying with new car sales, Philip's got the latest on the European markets, and we'll look at the latest on fines for OEMs who didn't hit their targets and how car brands are actually pooling their CO2 emissions to meet EU rules. Then in the second half, we'll share the latest full-year financials from the Peter Vardy Group and Stephen Eagell. And we'll finish off with an introduction of another new Chinese car maker with 3 new brand names heading to the UK this year.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast. If you're a supplier and would like us to profile your business and reach our audience of dealer bosses, managers and decision makers on one of our dedicated Supplier Specials episodes, get in touch with Curtis and Philip at motortraderadio@yahoo.com.
Well, as Curtis said there, the first story we're heading over to is based on the full year and December new car registration results. And AM had a bit of a sort of a preview of the results heading before the actuals came out. And this is that ZEV mandate puts a bitter aftertaste on successes of 2024 new car sales, says the SMMT, saying that were it not for pressures put on the car brands by the ZEV mandate targets, the UK's new car market in 2024 would have seen quite a different success story. So it's I think Mike's obviously hitting the market quite hard there, saying that obviously what's been happening around the results. I mean, we finished on 1.9 million registrations for the year, and that resulted in a 2.6% year-on-year increase. And that's sort of saying that there were 382,000 battery electric vehicles registered throughout that year, and that the result gave the BEV a record share of 19.6%. So not quite the figures that they were hoping for at the start of all of this.
So yeah, it's the biggest new car market since 2019. So we're talking pre-COVID when it hit 2.3 million. So as you say, the market's hit 1.95 million. So pretty good showing, but there's loads to unpick within this. As you say, it's the biggest EV market, taking 19.6 share. But retail demand, I mean, this is one of the real keys to the sort of overall trends over the course of the year. Retail demand was down to its lowest level since the pandemic, just taking a 31.5% market share. And it's worth just reflecting on that, because in the old days, which is probably only sort of 4 or 5 years ago, that the market was fairly evenly balanced between retail and fleet. It was 50-50 more or less. But as I say, 31.5% share for retail over the course of last year, and just 1 in 10 EVs being a private sale.
Yeah, like you say, I think retail have significantly felt the pain through 2024, and the stories we've been covering throughout the year, where fleet and business have really been one underpinning the full year results of registrations for the car market, but also underpinning the growth within that EV sector. And it's going to be interesting this year. And the headline talks about the ZEV mandate, and we know that at the minute there is the consultation that is taking place. The submissions are set to close on the 18th of February, which is when the sector has opportunities to submit their views to questions from the government around recommendations and things are for the consultation of the ZEV mandate. The question with that is that's nearly partway through the first quarter of this year. Then they've got to take that feedback and do something with it. And they're obviously talking about, different ways of reviewing the alternative fuels, plug-in hybrids, where they look at CO2, with looking at minimum range from the battery element on a hybrid vehicle. But it feels like we're going to lose quite a bit of 2025 before there's been any decisions, and depending what that decision is at the end of it.
Yeah, and you can't help but think that this should have been sorted out 3 or 4 years ago, rather than partway through what will be a key year. And certainly Q1, it is absolutely crucial for the new car market. So,
or at least in time to start the year off.
Yeah, exactly.
So that everybody knows what they are working to and what the parameters are. But at the minute, it's still very up in the air as to what they're working to. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to get a bit more of the same in 2025 as what we've got in 2024 there.
Yeah, and certainly within this story, Mike Halls makes it quite clear what drove the market, because there's a comment from him, Mike Halls, CEO of the SMMT. He says industry has pulled every lever to try and achieve this target, with manufacturer discounting totaling more than £4.5 billion in 2024, an amount that is not sustainable in the long term. Billions of pounds of investment in new tech and products over the past decade have delivered a record 132 ZEV models to the UK market, which is actually up 38% on the figures from 2023, to account for a third of all models available now. So it's showing the progress made by the OEMs in terms of delivering EV models and incentivizing them. But as he says, that's not sustainable, that level of discounting.
No, and talking about performers and heading over to car dealers. So VW, Volkswagen remained top selling brand in the UK, while MG overtook Vauxhall in 2024, according to the sales chart, saying that VW there remains the top UK's brand. Chinese brands posted strong sales. MG passed Vauxhall. Ford and Vauxhall saw heavy drops. So this is a bit of a league table there, but sort of highlighting of the winners of the market. But more importantly, as highlighted there, is those winners and losers of the registrations.
Yeah, definitely. And it is worth checking out this story, because there's A to Z's listing at the bottom of it of all the car manufacturers. And you can actually search by manufacturer to find out how they performed over the course of last year relative to 2023. But I've actually jotted down a few stats from it, because I mean, it's fascinating, the dynamics in the industry at the moment, and just looking at the top 5 performers. So in 5th place, we have Ford on 109,000 registrations, taking a 5.6% market share. Now, if you were to rewind to 2019, Ford was actually the biggest selling brand, which it had been pretty much for decades, with 236,000 registrations and a 10% market share. So it is really showing the new mix of the market, and where Ford is fitting in as a result of that. And this really does tie in with what we were saying on the first story about that fall in retail sales. That's hitting Ford hard. So also in the top 5, we've got number 4 Kia on 112,000 units, number 3 Audi with 122,000, number 2 BMW with 125,000, and as you said, the top performing brand for last year was Volkswagen with 166,000 units, taking an 8.5% market share.
Yeah, and like you say there, I mean, VW fairly static year on year at 2.6% increase on change, 2024 versus 2023. But Audi stands out, even though they're in 3rd position there. They did actually drop 10.95% year on year, from a 7.22% market share in 2023 down to 6.27% market share in 2024. So yeah, I think it kind of highlights some of those shifts in the market. But as you say there, I mean, MG down there starting to show so growth, but also you've got your Jaycos, you've got your Amodas in there, your BYDs. Those Chinese manufacturers now starting to show growth ahead of some of those incumbent manufacturers that we'd normally see in that marketplace. But just before we head on to looking at the performance by the commercial vehicle sector, in Europe, France saw in December 1.5% growth year on year to 183,700. That resulted in a marginal fall of 3.2% for the year, down to 1.7 million. Germany fell 7.1% in December, down to 224,000. And that resulted in a 2.8 million new car market for the year, down 1% year on year. Italy had a 4.9% fall in December, down to 105,000. A marginal fall year on year down to 1.6 million, down only 0.5%. But Spain finished on 1 million registrations for the year, and that was a 7.1% year on year increase. But they grew 28.8% in December to 105,300, which is actually closer to some of their pre-pandemic levels in the month of December. So some activity there in Spain. I suspect some of this will be through the floods that recently took place across the Spanish market that has triggered some of these replacement vehicles going through the sector in the month of December.
Yeah, and we'll take another look at some activity across Europe in relation to new car sales and future sales in just a few minutes. But before we do, let's have a look at the van sales for 2024. So we'll look at the SMMT press release, which went out under the headline "Electric Van Demand Static in 2024, despite biggest overall market in 3 years." So it ended up being a good year for van sales. So the new market rose 3% to beat the 350,000 units sold in the previous year, according to the latest figures from the SMMT. And that was pretty much, it actually saw quite a robust end to the year, because December saw just over 27,000 units sold, which rounded off a total of 351,834 units over the course of the year. Now, demand grew in every van weight, with uptake of the largest vans up 2.1%. But a cause for concern highlighted by the SMMT was the 8.3% drop in new pickup registrations.
Thanks, budget.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, well said. And it goes on to say that a volume which could fall significantly further in 2025 following the government's decision to tax double cabs as cars for benefit in kind. And this is going to affect a lot of buyers, certainly across farming and construction and sole traders. So that's a dynamic that will play out even more this year.
Yeah, and there is a little quote in here from Mike Oz, which does sum it up quite nicely, saying vans, 4x4s and pickups keep businesses everywhere on the move, making this sector a barometer of the UK economy. The best overall volume in 3 years, therefore, is good news for van makers striving to deliver abundant and competitive EV choice. Buyer confidence, however, will inevitably be undermined when charging infrastructure does not meet the needs of the fleet operators. A review of the EV regulation is crucial, therefore, to reflect current market realities and ensure ambitions are deliverable without any negative and costly consequences. So, sort of, again, Mike getting his point across of the view of that and the importance of that commercial vehicle market on the UK economy.
Yeah, and within that, it's worth just pointing out that BEV registrations rose 3.3% to just over 22,000 units, taking an overall market share of 6.3%. So still a long way to go there.
And heading back to the AM online and back to the subject of the ZEV mandate, and saying that the DFT, so the Department for Transport, believes no OEMs will pay fines from 2024 ZEV mandate. I think they actually, the OEM said they won't pay any fines, didn't they, Curtis, last year?
Yeah. I think most of them.
Most of them said we will not pay any fines.
Yeah.
So this is the DFT, Department for Transport, has responded to reports that the industry has missed the 2024 ZEV mandate target, with assurance it expects no car manufacturer to pay a crippling fines. And this is that the Automotive Management reported on Saturday that Mike Horse, Chief Executive of the SMMT, believes that the success of the 2024 market were tarnished, again, what we said earlier, by the threat of the ZEV mandate targets, which required 22% of the new car market to be electric vehicles.
Yeah, so as we said in the first story, the overall BEV market in terms of registrations for last year was 19.6%. The government target was 22%, but as you said, the DFT have confirmed there won't be any fines. So why is that? So the story actually explains that it's these flexibilities within the ZEV mandate. So a DFT spokesman told AM that the government is confident the whole market has complied, and these flexibilities allow OEMs to borrow, pool, or trade credits to help them hit their 2024 targets rather than face those fines of £15,000 per unit. The DFT said, thanks to the flexibilities in the ZEV mandate, we're confident the whole market has complied with the 22% target and that no car manufacturer will need to pay any fines. And this is all down to, you've got to rewind here to 2021. So part of the flexibilities in the ZEV mandate, manufacturers also have a CO2 target as well as a target on the number of vehicles sold. So the CO2 target is based on their emissions in 2021. And if a manufacturer beats their target, they can convert the amount they beat it in terms of targets towards ongoing ZEV compliance. So it gets a bit confusing, and I'm sure the calculators have been out, but the DFT, I think the main point is they're happy that overall the 22% has actually been met.
I think they're forgetting some of the numbers quoted in the first story there, Curtis, of how much it's cost to achieve some of these
yes.
targets is the bit that seems to be remiss there. But I think essentially that kind of does lead us on to this next story that was in Reuters this week, and the automakers to pool CO2 emissions with Tesla, Polestar to meet EU 2025 rules. And again, this is back sort of touching on that to what Curtis mentioned earlier, that they can buy credits, saying that pooling with EV makers or lets other manufacturers cut averages. The move could save firms hundreds of millions of euros in fines. Tesla to sell credit to car makers, including operators such as Stellantis, and that Polestar Volvo Cars Smart will sell extra credits to Mercedes. So again, I mean, there were obviously talks, I think we covered it at one point on the podcast, Curtis, around how much Tesla had made in a year, which was in the billions, from selling credits to other manufacturers, and others were going to do the same. But this is kind of confirming that this is already in conversations for the 2025 targets.
Yeah, and whilst last year, well, certainly at the moment, Tesla is barely out of the headlines on a daily basis for obvious reasons. But you're right. It could actually stand to generate a lot of money from selling these credits. And within the story, I mean, it really is fascinating what's going on behind the scenes in OEMs across Europe now, because a spokesperson for Polestar told Reuters that Polestar, Volvo and Smart will sell their surplus emission credits to Mercedes. So we now know where they're going. And it's going to be interesting to see if we get to hear where the other credits are going and how they're being divvied out. But there's a lot of activity going on behind the scenes across Europe at the moment.
Yeah, and there is a confirmation to what I mentioned earlier there, that Tesla carbon credit sales accounted for almost 3% of its $72 billion total revenue in the first 9 months of last year. So that kind of gives you a bit of a flavour of how much revenue operators such as Tesla can earn from selling credits, and now obviously other manufacturers are getting into that same space now, obviously as the pressure continues to ramp up on the other manufacturers to achieve their 2025 targets across Europe. But after the break, we're going to be joined by Stephen Whitton, as I mentioned earlier, our mental wealth guru, and he'll be looking at ways to move mental well-being higher up the dealer agenda in 2025.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on Motor Trade Radio, powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. This is your weekly one-stop shop for all the biggest car retailing headlines from across the media, available on demand, wherever you are, and on your podcast feed. Next up is our latest Men-Able moment, looking at mental wealth and well-being awareness and best practice in the automotive sector. With me, Stephen Whitton. Yeah, hi everyone, it's Men-Able moments time again, new and improved for 2025. Hope you're well. We are definitely going to be using the hashtag Thrive in 25 this year, because I think we're all really susceptible to the fact that the world is, let's say, a little bit challenged right now, isn't it? So what we want to do is just make sure we're all really cooperating, collaborating, working together, using all the strengths within our teams and everything that we've got to make sure that we all navigate these treacherous waters successfully and safely. So with that in mind, what are you excited for? What's going on in your lives, in your businesses, in your worlds that you're really excited for in 2025? And in your business, if you've got people around you, have you sat down with them and asked them what they're excited about and what are their plans and goals for the forthcoming year? And how can you all really kind of feed off of that to make 2025 a really, really good year for you? Now, that, of course, depends on how you measure success as well and how you're measuring good. What does good look like? So that might be a good place to start in defining what that actually is. So, yeah, Thrive in 25 is the theme. We've got a new approach for Men-Able moments in that we are going to do them once a month on the podcast. And in line with that, what we're also going to do, because we have some fabulous sponsors, is it is my intention, one of the things I'm excited about, is to bring you some webinars, seminars, whatever you want to call them, little gatherings maybe on Zoom meetings and things like that. And we'll probably schedule in one of those a month where we can get you on a Zoom call and you can talk about whatever you want, meet some people around the trade, talk to me, of course, and anyone else that wants to get involved. So please drop me a line on action@menable.org if you want to be a part of that. Now, what's prompted that is that I did get a reach out this week from somebody who said they've been listening to the Men-Able moments. They're a regular Motor Trade Radio podcast listener and really took great value out of what we talk about. And this particular person, you know who you are, was saying that they suffer with a bit of overthinking and a bit of overwhelm and really want some hints and tips on how to really navigate all of that. And my instant thought was, well, there's no better way of doing that than getting you together with a few other people that perhaps feel the same, and realising the first part of that is that noticing that you are not alone and that you are in this together. So that's exciting for me. We're definitely going to be doing these webinars, and I think this is also the year for Men-Able to be even more intentional about what we're doing. I do honestly believe that we have some work to do around culture in our business, and the reason I say that is that I have now a number of really good case studies of organisations who have properly embraced this, and the change in the way they operate and the change of culture and the change in terms of things like attrition and absences is so noticeable. It's unbelievable. But we're not working with everyone in the industry, so if you are looking towards that, then give us a shout, because that's another thing to get excited about. And with that in mind, what I also want this year is for more conferences and more seminars and gatherings, trade shows and all of that to put people higher on the agenda. And for the last couple of years, I've seen many conferences where they talk about the rise of electric vehicles, autonomous driving, all things relating to the management of the industry, and people and well-being tends to be an afterthought or is shoved somewhere into the agenda where it's almost kind of slipped in. So I think we need to get more intentional. So if you're out there and you're planning a conference or a seminar or anything this year, please get more intentional and put well-being and people higher up the agenda and make it more of a point. And don't do that thing where you stick it on the agenda after lunch and everyone clears off because they've heard what they wanted to hear in the morning. So we do need to address some of that stuff this year. And I'm talking to everyone in the motor trade now. So really excited about all of that. Me personally, I'm going to be doing more travelling. I'm going to be doing more of what gives me joy. And I'm going to be more intentional about what we bring you on these Men-able moments. So stay tuned. Thanks again to the guys, Curtis and Phil, for giving us the opportunity and the platform to keep these going. Love you all to bits. And let me know what else you want to hear, and we'll keep you posted on what's coming up in the next few months. Yeah, as always, if you want any help or support with anything, you know how to get hold of me, stephen.whitton@menable.org. And let's thrive in 25 and make this an intentional, exciting year, despite all the rubbish that's going on in the world. I'm sure between us as an industry, we can continue to make it a fabulous place. But let's make sure our people are a key part of that. So, have a great weekend and a good week, and we will catch up again soon. Many thanks.
Well, there's definitely a man with a plan, Phil.
Well, we deliver the negative and what people are going to have to sort of get their head around and understand, and you know, Steve is there to sort of put it in the little boxes and help you manage your way through all this complexity that Curtis and I deliver each week in the headlines, isn't it?
Yeah. It was a ray of sunshine, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. He's actually over in the sunshine, I think, every minute,
Yes.
which is probably partly to do with it, whilst we're all looking at the temperatures plummeting and how we're going to get out the cars out and things like that. He's actually over in the sunshine. So shout out, Steve. Thanks for that. Great kickoff to 2025. And as you say, they're thriving 2025, and we couldn't agree anymore to what you were saying there with making mental health and well-being a more priority on the agenda throughout this year. So, and as always, as Stephen said there, if you do need to get hold of him, then you can reach out to him through menable.org, or find him on any of the social channels, definitely on LinkedIn. So do reach out to him.
So the next two stories are both year-end financial results. So we'll start with Peter Vardy Group, and it's for both stories are year-ending December 2023. And these over the next week or so, I think we'll get probably the last of those year ends for 2023. And both these stories are from Car Dealer, and they've researched them from Companies House. So starting with Peter Vardy, the headline there is Car Dealer Peter Vardy announces £10 million losses following most significant year of transformation. So this is Peter Vardy announcing losses of more than £10 million. And it's the pre-tax losses actually totaled 10.93 million in the 12 months to the end of December 23. And the figure actually marks a drastic fall on the previous year, when the group made a profit of £4.8 million, with bosses there pointing to the cost of strategic decisions as a major reason for the drop. Now, the period saw the firm axe its Peter Vardy Cars used car supermarket sites as part of a drive to support long-term sustainable growth, and other strategic changes over the period included incorporating its car money finance business into the overall Peter Vardy Holdings Group in order to remain agile and efficient. So a lot going on there at the Peter Vardy Group over the course of the 2023 calendar year.
Yeah, and as you say there, I think a lot of there has been a few, say stragglers that have been holding out on publishing their results for 2023. And I think back to what we initially spoke about when we started to see some of these 2023 results compared to 2022 is the exceptional year that we saw as a sector in 2022 with high used car prices, high margins on both new and used vehicles. So again, putting a bit of context in there as to that 2023 performance. But again, looking at the year ending 2023, again, sticking with car dealer there, and Stephen Eagell Group sees profits slashed in half, despite turnover topping 1 billion, which I think was kind of what we were saying last time on some of these, weren't it? Where, you know, profits were dropped, but turnover was up.
Yes.
So this is Europe's biggest Toyota and Lexus dealership group, published their, obviously, annual accounts up until the end of December, saying that the documents show a slide in profits on Stephen Eagell's group, but turnover goes through the roof. And that Bossy praised the company's resilience of their performance. So saying that obviously the profits halved, as we said right at the start there, although turnover topping 1 billion for the first time in the latest set of annual accounts. So as you say there, Curtis, some not great reads there, but if we think back to some of the other 2023 full year results that we've talked about on the podcast, not dissimilar to what many were reporting for that challenging period of 2023, where a lot of them were on the back of some very good, strong performances in 2022.
Yeah, and it's worth just adding for both of these stories, it doesn't include 2024. So this is quite old news now. So 2024 we won't get to hear about until later in the year. But moving on. So the last story this week is from Motor Trade News, and the headline there is launch of Neo brands could offer opportunities to UK dealers. So more news on more Chinese brands coming to the UK. But this is particularly interesting because it involves not one, but three brands. So the brands we're talking about is Neo. So that's the umbrella of the three brands. So it's Neo, Onvo, and Firefly. And the story, which is based on a report that was in Automotive News Europe, suggests that these brands could be on sale in the UK in 2025. So pretty imminently.
Yeah, and it's interesting because at one point Neo had a full strategic plan for entrance to the UK sector, and then that started to change. I think 2023 into 2024, where UK really wasn't their priority and they were going to focus a little bit more in Europe initially. But obviously, what they're talking about here is obviously with the tariffs now being imposed by European Parliament there, that the UK becomes suddenly a little bit more attractive. Let's hope the UK government don't do some kind of U-turn on tariffs there, Curtis. But I think at the minute it is that the UK is obviously becoming an attractive proposition, particularly in addition to some of those global and international manufacturers, but particularly of interest for the Chinese manufacturers, being driven by the tariff situation happening, obviously one in the US with the Trump administration taking on the, is it 20th of January, I think he's due to be sworn in.
Yes,
We won't get into that political world. And obviously what's happening across Europe. But as Curtis said there, that obviously we've seen what's been happening with Amoda and Jigcar and BYD and others in the UK market, with the UK retailers really embracing some of those manufacturers. And this really gives them, again, additional opportunities there with these three propositions now, which is going to be interesting now, because I don't know what the numbers are of those manufacturers come to the UK.
Yeah, and certainly within this story, that they do highlight that these will be value-focused brands, and the entry point could be as low as £16,000 for one of the vehicles, certainly within the Firefly brand. And as you say, that this is, we add this to a long list of recent launches from BYD, Omoda, Jigcar, Skywell, which went on sale in 2024. But we've also got Leap Motors, which is being launched at the moment by Stellantis, and Xpeng, which is being rolled out by IM Group. So if you thought 2024 was busy in terms of new brands coming to the UK, it looks as though we're going to accelerate that in 2025, and we're only in January.
Yeah. So I think we're going to hear more and more from this now. And they say NIO went a little bit quiet, I think, as they started to focus on Europe away from the UK. But it obviously looks like they are back fully focused on the UK, and the first Onvo from that lineup vehicle will be the L60 Coupe SUV, predicted to arrive in early 2025, and that's to rival the Tesla Model Y. And obviously then they talk about the Firefly being a little bit more of a smaller hatchback. It's quite an interesting reference that it's referenced against the Renault 5. That takes us back a few years, Curtis.
Yeah, that was the first car I ever drove.
So I think Curtis has summed that right there. That you thought 2024 was a busy year for manufacturers and new entrants to the UK automotive sector, and I think we're starting to see, we're going to see a lot more of that, and I think back to the earlier story right at the SMMT results that Curtis went through, and those incumbent manufacturers that are struggling with market share. The retailers need products, they need manufacturers, they need vehicles to sell, and obviously what things like NIO and others offer them is alternative propositions, alternative products to put in their primary or secondary outlets, their showrooms. So I think it's great news for the UK retailers, gives them opportunity, and gives us lots of things to talk about for 2025, Curtis.
It certainly does, yeah. I think we've hit the ground running this week, but that is all for now. So many thanks for joining us on the Motor Trade Radio podcast. Until next week, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Thank you for listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. We'll be sharing all the URLs from this week's headlines on Monday morning. To make sure you receive them, just subscribe to the free newsletter on our LinkedIn page. Just search Motor Trade Radio Podcast.